Hi friends, my name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Sanctions from Vega. So I wanted to share with you three different things today, just some snippets that I came across that I thought were interesting. One is that President Donald Trump of the US has revoked an executive order that the Pentagon does not have to report on the civilian deaths from drone strikes. Now they already underreport that, and since Trump has been in office, civilian casualties have increased by at least 250%. And so now that, last year the Pentagon reported that I think there was 500 civilians killed in drone strikes. That includes wedding parties like in Yemen, and funeral processions, and villages, people just in villages who are droned. And that's probably an underestimate. It's usually much higher than that.
We're fighting wars, and they're doing reports and releasing it to the public. Now, the public means the enemy. The enemy reads those reports. They study every line of it. Those reports should be private reports. Let them do a report, but they should be private reports.
I think that they want to make sure that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Boeing and other major defense contractors can continue to sell the drones and to sell the weapons. This is a very, very foolish way forward. It's foolish and it's dangerous and it's erratic and it's unpredictable. And all of those things don't contribute toward defense.
And so now, basically with impunity, the Trump administration and the Pentagon and the war machine can just drone these people in Yemen and elsewhere, and they don't have to report any civilian deaths. And usually there's always children involved in that, that are killed in those drone strikes. This is a terrible development in the Trump's kind of tough guy sort of image that now he's trying to portray before the 2020 elections. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was that, and this is good news, that the Empire Files with Avi Martin and Michael Preisner, they have reached the 100,000 subscriber mark, which is excellent. And if you're not a subscriber to that channel, please hunt it down and then subscribe. And it's an excellent program. And if you're not a Patreon member, if you're not contributing, donating to that program, please do, because they're viewer funded. They used to be funded by Telesur, but Telesur, with all the sanctions on Caracas and everything, it became impossible for the Empire Files to continue. And so then they decided to become viewer funded, and so it's gone from there. So please check that out. And I wanted to share with you a little excerpt from Avi Martin's, from the Empire Files from a couple of programs ago. It's about Trump's expanding the war machine. And it's about how economic sanctions, which Trump has increased a few dozen times now on places like Venezuela, but how economic sanctions are an act of war, literally, and people die because of it. So I just wanted to share this little excerpt just to show the sort of excellent reporting and the passion of the Empire Files.
But Trump isn't just making sure kids in the United States go hungry, but children in every country deemed our enemies. Because the US dollar drives the global economy, the empire frequently wields sanctions to bend countries to its will. Anyone claiming to be anti-war or even just anti-intervention must oppose any and all economic sanctions. Make no mistake, sanctions are war, and not in a hyperbolic sense. They are real attacks that kill real people. The impact of sanctions is never discussed in the US media. They're always treated as a kind of soft solution, with the assumption that they only affect society's corrupt elites. These are assumptions nowhere close to reality. Sanctions hurt the most vulnerable, and by design. That's why they intentionally target medicine, clean water, and access to food. The logic of sanctions is, if you kill and starve enough innocent civilians, they'll blame their own government and rise up and overthrow them so American forces don't have to waste any blood doing so. Their genocidal impact cannot be overstated. Looking at Iraq alone, US sanctions in the 90s that blockaded medicine from the country killed 500,000 Iraqi babies. That's the true face of sanctions. They're not an alternative to war. Sanctions are war in every way. So what has Trump done with the daggers of US sanctions? He's shown the true face of his foreign policy. Obama implemented hundreds of sanctions during his tenure, but Trump is ramping them up in nearly every region, adding hundreds more in just his first 2 years. The most destructive application of sanctions has been in Iran, where Trump upended Obama's historic nuclear deal and added 143 sanctions that have since debilitated their economy. Then there's North Korea, where people give Trump credit for peace between the North and South. Amazingly, despite the media's rhetoric of Trump bowing down to dictators, he has installed 80 new sanctions on the DPRK, compared to the 74 applied by Obama. In Syria, Trump has authorized a stunning 287 new sanctions. That's almost double the amount applied under Obama. He's administered 43 new sanctions on Libya so far. In Russia and Ukraine, Trump has defied the notion he's a Putin puppet by sanctioning the region 105 times so far, for everything from annexing Crimea, to the alleged meddling in the 2016 election, to the attempted poisoning of Sergei Skripal. Not to mention the 43 cyber sanctions put on the figures alleged to have hacked in the DNC. Next is Venezuela. Even though Obama added 7 sanctions during his term, Trump's laser focus is set on destroying the country once and for all. He's already employed 63 new sanctions to strangle Venezuela and undermine any chance for economic recovery. He's imposed many more sanctions on independent, progressive countries like Cuba and Nicaragua. What do all these countries have in common? It's not some standard of democracy or human rights. It's that they all are independent of US domination. They chart their own path and decide what's done with the wealth of their own country. The biggest thing they have in common is that none of them pose any threat to us. It would be bad enough if the Trump administration was only expanding economic warfare on these countries, but they're taking it much further. Any corner of the globe we look to, we see that he is indeed expanding the US empire's influence and operations. He has ratcheted up with new fire and veracity, covert and overt regime change operations, expansion of military bases, massive increases in bombings and civilian casualties, and belligerent escalations that put us on the brink of catastrophic war on multiple fronts. As we'll show in this multi-part series, Trump Expanding the Empire, that whether or not Trump pisses off, offends, or even destabilizes powerful sectors of the imperialist state, he has only put war and militarism on the march. It may be confusing how Trump is still making proclamations about stopping endless wars, but we have to look at his actions, not his rhetoric. And yes, there is growing opposition to Trump within the halls of power, but not because they think Trump is going to rein back the empire, because he's simply self-absorbed and unpredictable. With all the praise about the most diverse Congress in history, you can't seem to find any diversity in opinion when it comes to continuing US imperialism. We can't let the Democrats steer the resistance away from where it needs to be, in the streets, linking our struggles, fighting the expansive US empire.
So please contribute to the Empire Files, even just if it's like $5 a program. If a whole bunch of people, if every subscriber that's there so far, I'm a Patreon to Empire Files and Eyes Left Podcast and Media Roots Radio. And I can't afford much, but, if everybody does it, if say the 100,000 subscribers that were on Empire Files all gave $5 for $5 a month, well, that's $500,000, you know, and that would be really great for that program to be able to continue production. I'm not sure how they actually live themselves, like, because it seems like what they gather together would probably, it seems like it would only cover production costs, and but I don't know. But anyway, think about that. Think about becoming a Patreon, and I'll leave a Patreon link for the Empire Files so that you can go and become a Patreon member, and you can. I think they have for as little as $1 a month or something. It's not very much, but it all adds up. Anyway, so and the last thing I wanted to talk about, of course, since I last spoke to you, Ilhan Omar has been removed from the Foreign Affairs Senate Committee, which was no surprise because, as Dan Cohen said in a tweet recently, she's really just challenging US empire, basically. She's criticized the US participation in the genocide that's happening in Yemen. She's talked about, I think, Saudi Arabia. She's criticized AIPAC, the Israel lobby that's basically lobbying Congress to do foreign policy that's favorable to Israel and also give them $10 million a day. She's actually, you know, Ilhan Omar, I don't agree with everything that she says, because she said that the Venezuelan government, there needs to be another election. No, there doesn't. It's actually, the elections were fair and transparent, and I don't care if the Carter Institute is now backing away from an incredible detailed report they did in 2012, which said that they were the best elections in the world. Now they're backing away from that. I wonder why. I don't care what they say. I even know somebody that went down there for the last election, and they reported back that, you know, it went incredibly well. So you know, she said, you know, Ilhan Omar unfortunately said, you know, that the Venezuelan people need to have another election. No, they don't. It was fair and square, and President Maduro got through. Is he the best president they've ever had? No, he's not. But he was elected fair and square, and I think that he, to a great degree, is handling this attempt to overthrow and invade Venezuela. I think he's handling it very well. So anyway, that's that one. But Ilhan Omar is is being given a terrible time, and please support her on Twitter. Please support her if you can by donating to any fund that, you know, for re-election, because really she's probably one of the only voices there that actually really confronts and challenges the US imperialist war machine. And that could go down like a lead balloon in the Democratic Party, because they're a bunch of warmongers in the Democratic Party, and they love war, and they love their weapons industry loving money as much as the GOP does. So, you know, they love war, and that's one of the reasons they want to shut her up. And I'm sure that there was talk somewhere where AIPAC was going to donate to a candidate to primary her, so that they, you know, they can basically get rid of her out of government, basically. That's from what I understand will be done eventually. So, you know, that's a dreadful thing. You know, a black Muslim woman in a hijab who speaks out against the US imperialist war machine, that perpetual war. They're trying to get rid of her, and they're smearing her and calling her anti-Semitic for stating a fact about AIPAC, which is that it's the Israel lobby which is donating to Congress members and influencing foreign policy in relation to Israel, the apartheid state of Israel. She hasn't said apartheid state, but that's what it is. And that's what she's called out. And just like the Washington Post has said that about Israel, that basically, sorry, about AIPAC, but because she's Muslim, and the Washington Post basically is a rag. It's a propaganda rag. But in 2015, they did an essay about that, about AIPAC's influence. And you only have to see the influence if you watch the documentary by on the Electronic Intifada. They have a link to the documentary that was banned, and it's about the Israel lobby. You only have to see that. It's just stating a fact about AIPAC. And that's all she did. And she's being smeared and called anti-Semitic and called the Steve King of the left, all sorts of awful things. And they're going to get rid of her as fast as they can because she challenges US empire. So we need to support people like that. So please give her support. And, you know, it's very, very important. Unless, of course, she goes off the rails and she starts doing something bad. But until that time, please give her support. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, was this interesting video I saw from Soapbox, which is John Bolton, the national security, I think he's the national security advisor. Sorry, I've forgotten his role, but he's one of the big wigs that goes around warmongering, like Pompeo. And this Jake Tapper, who normally is just a tool of empire, actually decided to, a propaganda tool in the media. He decided to, I don't know what made him slip up and ask a question like this, but he basically asked John Bolton, so since the US supports so many dictators, you know, around the world, why is it that this dictator, Maduro, calls him a dictator? He's not a dictator, but this is what they refer to Maduro, as a dictator. Why is he so, you know, has a problem with this particular dictator? Which I thought was pretty funny. And he didn't really answer the question. He was sort of trying not to answer that question, and it didn't make sense, his answer. But check out this little excerpt. I think it's really worth watching. And then listen to what he says at the end about the Monroe Doctrine. The arrogance of this empire, that they think that they call the Latin America their backyard. They refer to Latin America as their backyard, and that they have to basically make it bring democracy. We've heard that before. How bringing democracy, what it does to various countries. Look at Libya, look at Iraq, and etc. So they want to bring democracy and kind of and restore stability, and this is the words that he uses in this, and equilibrium and stuff. I mean, I don't know how they're. I don't know how they. I don't know if they believe this nonsense, or whether they're just completely deluded, or they're just what I think they are, which is just lying psychopaths. But the arrogance, this American exceptionalism, that it's okay to just that you consider other people's countries who have got their own governments that have been democratically elected, and you feel it's your right to just go in and decide who's going to run the country for people. I mean, the xenophobe, this racist Monroe Doctrine, this colonialist Monroe Doctrine, they still carry that around. Still, this is the 21st century. But this is the attitude. It's just astounding. I don't know if how many American citizens find this astounding, but being from another country and watching the way the US talks about other countries, other sovereign countries, is just astounding to me. It's astounding to me, and it's astounding to other people who have a clue, you know? So anyway, just watch this video, because it's just fascinating, like, to watch this psychopath in action, and they're all like that, the way they talk. So check that out.
Let's turn to South America. You tweeted on Friday about Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, quote, "Those who continue to support a dictator that violates human rights and steals from the starving should not be allowed to walk around with impunity," unquote. Just as a matter of course, and this didn't start with the Trump administration, the United States supports any number of dictators who violate human rights, including the leaders of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Should those who support those dictators not be allowed to walk around with impunity?
You know, I've put out roughly 150 tweets on Venezuela. This is a new experiment in public diplomacy. The fact is that we are trying to rally support for the peaceful transition of power from Maduro to Juan Guaido, whom we recognize as president. And I think since most of my tweets also come out in Spanish, because we want to reach the Latin American audience in particular, that a lot of people, especially on the political left, in the hemisphere and around the world, now understand that the failed experiment of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro needs to end. So I'd like to see as broad a coalition as we can put together to replace Maduro, to replace the whole corrupt regime. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, certainly Maduro is nobody that I would defend in any way. But
well, that's good to hear.
But do you not see that the United States support for other brutal dictators around the world undermines the the credibility of the argument you're making?
No, I don't think it does. I think it's separate. And I think, look, in this administration, we're not afraid to use the phrase Monroe Doctrine. This is a country in our hemisphere. It's been the objective of American presidents going back to Ronald Reagan to have a completely democratic hemisphere. I mentioned back at the end of last year that we're looking very much at the troika of tyranny, including Cuba and Nicaragua, as well as Maduro. Part of the problem in Venezuela is the heavy Cuban presence, 20 to 25,000 Cuban security officials by reports that have been in the public. This is the sort of thing that we find unacceptable, and that's why we're pursuing these policies.
Thanks so much for watching. It's just been these are just excerpts I thought you might find interesting. I've been a little bit busy lately, so I haven't had a lot of time to check things out, the news lately. But I did come across these today, and I thought you might find them interesting. And please do support the Empire Files with Abby Martin. Please check out their channel if you haven't already. The fantastic programs they have. They're so informative, so much research. And they get high praise from a lot of people. I mean, these people deserve many, many journalist awards, but they'll never receive them because the mainstream media is sewn up, and you don't get awards for telling the truth anymore. You don't. You get $30,000 a day if you promote mainstream media propaganda, if you promote government propaganda. That's what Rachel Maddow gets. That's what these other people get. I don't know if Jake Tapper gets $30,000 a day, but I imagine he gets a whole lot of money. But Rachel Maddow, with all her Russiagate stuff, it's made her the top rating program, and she gets $30,000 a day. Imagine that. Where people like Abby Martin are having to ask the public for money, and yet she's in another universe. That program is in another universe where it's actual journalism, and it's actually telling the truth, which is... it's almost a prisonable offense now, telling the truth. I mean, that's how fascism is creeping along. Anyway, so please if you like this content, please click the like button, please subscribe and click the notification bell, and click it twice apparently, and then you get the updates. And please leave comments. I always enjoy your comments. Thank you so much for commenting. It's sort of good to see that people are engaging with the content. I always hope there's at least a few people that take the time to just, have a look. And I try to pick out what I think are interesting aspects of the news that maybe require some more attention. And I'm just a nobody who does this, but I sort of feel like if we all tried to do this to counter the extraordinary ocean of propaganda that's out there, it helps break through that propaganda. And so, if we all kind of do something, sharing information from Empire Files and that sort of thing, and other programs like Moderate Rebels and the Grey Zone Project, that kind of thing, if we share information from that every day, all of us, then we are helping break through the terrible propaganda that is out there now, the ocean of propaganda. And we need to break through that. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Fancy Signals from Vega. Till next time, bye for now.